G'day, welcome back. Now last video, I got a bit cranky and I went on a rant. So this video, I figured I owe you and I'm going to do something a bit more positive. And today, we're going to look at how I understand my brain as my head office. Now I was reading on the internet about dealing with negative thoughts, and one suggestion was to understand how your own brain works. You may remember in a previous video that I briefly explained how the 5 OEs connect together. So your senses, your emotions, imagination, intellect, and your psychomotor. Your senses come in from external sources and they feed through to your emotions for an initial reaction. It's then your intellect's job to figure out what to do with that information and how to react. Meanwhile, your imagination can come in and meddle with things for you on the way through, and any excess electrical activity gets passed on through to your body and your psychomotor OE. And in this case, I've chosen to understand my brain as a head office. And for me, that's important because it's allowed me to do a SWOT analysis, or a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats analysis. In this case, because it's not actually a business, I've mostly been able to focus on my strengths and weaknesses in each area. But that's been great because it's helped me manage my thoughts and my habits a lot better. In this case, I've also chosen to add another element in, which is your conscious. Now you might choose to call this your spiritual self or your moral compass, but it's a combination of your beliefs and values that come from both outside and internally. Now in the analogy of a company, here's the roles that I've allocated to the various parts of my mind. So my intellect is the CEO, because literally it's up to your intellect to make decisions on your behavior and to manage the other parts of your brain. So your intellect is the big boss. Imagination is my marketing head. He's in charge of creativity and sometimes does a really great job, but he's also responsible for coming up with fictions, half-truths and fears. Gotta watch that guy. There's also the senses. Now they're my data and analytics team. They're great. They deal with all the data input and are great at gathering external facts. They report directly through to my people leader, who is my emotional seat. Now, here's the first response. He makes recommendations up to the CEO, to the intellect, the big boss. But it's his job primarily to feel things and to look after his people. My body, or my psychomotor OE, is my janitorial team, because literally they deal with the mess that the rest of them create. So any excess activity that's going on in my brain will cause my psychomotor to start going off. And lastly, we've got the new player, which is the conscience. And for me, they're like human resources, because when things aren't going well and people aren't being dealt with fairly and equitably, that's when human resources steps in. And not even intellect is immune from the influence of the moral compass. So now I've got all the players in my office, I have to figure out how they fit together. And the way I've chosen to do that is with an organisational chart. And so you can see on the top layer, we've got the executive. And so that's intellect, because pretty much everyone reports through to the CEO. Intellect has the final say on all your actions and all your words. So everything that you decide to do or say is run via your intellect. In the middle, we've got middle management. So imagination and emotion sit there, but also your conscience. And I've put a dotted line in there because your conscience doesn't always need to come into play, but it always needs to be in the background. You know, HR don't normally turn up unless there's a problem, and we hope there's very few problems in my head office company. And on the bottom level, we have the workforce teams. So they're the senses and the body, because they're dealing with the external. The senses report to emotion, so everything that comes in through your sight, your hearing and your taste, touch and smell goes through for an emotional reaction first before being passed through to your intellect. But I've got the body in this case reporting straight through to the big boss. And considering them as people, that gives me an opportunity to give each of those a persona, which will then allow me to see my strengths and weaknesses. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my team. Now we're going to start off with the big boss intellect. Now my CEO is pretty good, And generally, if you do have a high IQ and you're gifted, your CEO is going to be in pretty good shape as well. My CEO's strengths is that she's definitely the most competent and capable staff member on the team. She's been very much responsible for most of the company's successes. So anything that I did well at school when I was a kid, or anything I've done well at work in my adult life, normally it's intellect who's responsible for those. And she's really great and kept the company running through a whole heap of crises that we've had. And if it wasn't for her, there would have been plenty of times that the whole company may have gone under. Now, if my CEO's got any weaknesses, it's that the poor woman is overworked because the other staff in the company require way too much micromanagement. And sometimes when decisions go badly, she has a habit of overanalyzing those past poor decisions as well. Then I've got my emotions. That's my people leader. Remember, he's in charge of first responses and recommendations through to the boss. My emotional people leader's strengths are that he cares deeply about the team and the company. He really does. And he's had a lot of years of service and helped the CEO through some really hard years. He's also very strong with external clients when he's in his comfort zone. So when I'm in my comfort zone with people that I know, I'm generally pretty good with them. But he does have some pretty severe weaknesses, my poor old people leader. He is really prone to panicking and he just cannot be left in charge. If intellect walks off the job and leaves my emotions in charge, you can bet there's going to be a disaster. He also rushes work and forgets to make sensible recommendations at times. So he might get data through from my data and analytics team, remember those are my sensors, and will rush through to the boss with a panic reaction and not really given any thought to what he should actually be feeling. He needs a lot of input from the CEO and he's had to be performance managed a few times. So we've gone to some dark places where we've had to get some professional help in. Now my sensors, my analytical team, they're pretty good. They deal with data and external facts and, unlike emotions, they don't have some of those problems. Their strengths are they're very accurate, very factual and very detailed. They're very fast as well. They also understand nuance and what the CEO is looking for. So for example, if I look at my walls in my house, which I rent, I can see every patch of paint where the previous tenants have painted over, even where a property manager can't, because for some reason my eye can pick up the two various shades of paint, even though someone else might look at it and think it's a match. So they're really detailed, and the boss, the CEO, really likes that about them. However, their weaknesses are they can overwhelm the people leader at times. So with my light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, tactile sensitivity, sometimes the outside world is a bit too much and it causes my people leader and my emotions to freak out a little bit. So sometimes they're taking in too much detail because they don't know how to summarize those guys. They just feed everything straight through. And they can get overwhelmed when conditions change. You put a woolen jumper on my analytical team and they will just have a complete meltdown. Now, my imagination, my marketing guy, he's in charge of creativity, but also in charge of the fictions and the fears that go on in my mind. Now, he's a pretty loud guy, my marketing head, and sometimes he just goes rampant. He's been seen after hours in the office racking up lines of Coke on the desk and chugging down Red Bull during the day, and he can get very carried away. He does have strengths though. He's amazing at creative ideas, which have really impressed the CEO in the past. The CEO likes it when he comes up with a great painting or with a poem. Really good at that. He's also got a good sense of humour. He's very keen to be working when he's kept happy. And he's also cross-skilled and knows the industry well. The old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. I do have a few creative outlets at my disposal. But he's got a lot of weaknesses, the old imagination. He's highly undisciplined and cannot be left in charge of my mind under any circumstances. He's even worse than the people leader at that. You leave my imagination in charge and he will derail my entire life. We will forget all sorts of stuff. We will not know what time of day or date it is and things will go horribly, horribly wrong. He also has a tendency to butt in with worst case scenarios and really annoys the CEO with them. So when I'm trying to think through my problems, it's often that my imagination will come charging into the boss's office and try and tell the CEO that the sky is falling. He also distracts the rest of the team and is a very bad influence on them. As I said, makes us late for things, makes us forget all sorts of stuff. He's a real annoying bastard sometimes. Now, my body, the janitorial team, they're the ones that deal with the messes and cleaning up everything that goes on in the office and the processing plant. Those guys are really hard working. They're very dedicated to the CEO, my janitorial team. They can do long hours and can be very efficient at times. So when I need to type something out, they can work very fast and I can sit at a computer for long extended hours. And they can turn out work really quickly too, those guys. They're quite good. But they are prone to stress and they can complain and randomly go on sick leave. So sometimes if I've been pushing myself too hard, my body will collapse on me. They can also get bored and stay after hours in the workplace socialising. So particularly if imagination gets involved and decides to chuck a little party after hours, so we're up all night thinking of new creative ideas, that's when I'll start pacing and not sleeping and my psychomotor OE will start going off. And so the janitorial team can stay in the office just a little too long for my liking sometimes. And last but not least is my conscience, my moral seat, or my belief and value systems. And that's human resources. Remember, the human resources person is there to keep everybody else morally on track. My human resources person is a new person. They're quite young. They're very hardworking and dedicated to the CEO. And because they're a new person, they've got a lot of great new ideas and fresh perspectives. So if you go through some life changes or some personal things, sometimes you can replace the staff on your team. Thankfully, this new person is on deck far more than their predecessor were. If they have any weaknesses, it's their lack of experience. It's because we've had some previous employees in that role who have walked out and left the role vacant, shamedly, for long periods. So, there's been some moments in my life that I'm completely not proud of. And this poor human resources person unfortunately has a lot of legacy to clean up after. So I do have some issues and I've got some things from my past that I really regret. And my poor HR person is busy cleaning that sort of stuff up, learning to forgive ourselves, learning to move on, and learning to let go of things. So that's my team. That's my head office team. What do you think? How would your team be? Would they have the same strengths and weaknesses? Do they have different personas? And how would they all interact with each other? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Remember, this is just an idea though. I am no expert. I'm just one person with OE sharing my ideas in order to try and spread some happiness. And I hope this video made you just a little bit happy. See you later.